So we'll cover them up today. What are the various ways of storing information onto the device? So if you all remember, right, so the Android storage comes up in 4 segments. One is the internal storage, then the other one is the external storage, then we have the shared preferences, and finally we have the SQLite databases. There are 2 ways of storing information onto the device, alright. First is my application writes information onto the internal storage. Can anybody tell me what is the internal storage folder here? If you all remember, I told you about a folder which says data. Am I wrong here if I say that the data folder is my internal storage for the application? Am I wrong here to say? Here I say SD card, right? So I say the data folder is the one that is actually where my application resides, right? So whenever I talk about an internal storage, I mean that my application will make use of the data that is present inside its folder structure. I hope everybody gets it correctly. It's like the data that is present inside its folder structure is the one that I talk in terms of internal storage. However, sometimes what happens is that I need to have data which is huge in memory. For example, I'm making use of, or say, clicking images. I'm clicking images on a device that is holding a camera of 8 megapixels. In that case, if I'm trying to hold an image of mine will be consisting of around 3.5 to 4 MB. Is that correct? Whenever I use the device camera, which is having a very high resolution camera, I might be getting the images which might be of the size 3.5 to 4 MB. Right? So should I be storing those images inside my internal storage, or should I be storing those images onto my external storage is my question for everyone. Rachit says internal, Prabha says external. Alright, Rachit and Prabha, I'll tell you the pros and cons of both. Alright, if I do a store of these images onto the internal storage, it is going to make my application slow, first thing, and secondly, it will load my application with some data. I hope that is correct. Now if I talk about the external storage saving, then in that case, if I do it on the external, I'm not loading my application. In a way, my application's performance is very good. But only one condition matches here, which says the user has access to the SD card or the external storage. So whenever the user can delete the file, my application might get crashes. I hope the difference is clear to everyone between the internal storage and the external storage. Prabha, Rachit, Ruddhiman, Sameer, anyone having any doubts here? Let's close this up. And now let's talk about the internal storage first of all. So as I said, you can save files directly on the device's internal storage. By default, whatever files that you are saving to the internal storage are the ones that are private to your application. That is, they are private to the application because they reside inside the application folder. That the application folder where the application resides is inaccessible to the user. Right. So whenever the user uninstalls your application, these files are automatically removed. I said whenever the application gets uninstalled, these files are automatically removed. Alright, that's correct, Ruddhiman. Ruddhiman says the memory gets cleared, because the reason why the memory gets cleared is whenever you have an application uninstalled, the complete application folder gets removed from the memory. Alright, so that is why it also gets wiped off. How are we going to use it up? First of all, you'll be going to call an open file output method with the name of the file and the operating mode. So the operating mode has to be like if you want to read the file, if you want to write the file, if you want to append any piece of information to an existing file. So these are the various modes of operations that we can work on. So this returns a file output stream. So this particular open file output method returns to you a file output stream. and you can write or say read anything onto the file output stream. Let me show you an example for this. Go on to the internal storages here. Let me go back to main here. I hope everybody can see this main.xml file here. So I'm having a text box. I'm having a text view which is holding the name. Then I'm having an edit text which is holding the input for the name. Then I'm having a phone number which will be holding the phone number. Then I'm having a button at the bottom which says save information, right? So whenever I'll be clicking on this button save information, I'll be storing something back onto the internal storage. Now let's go here. Onto the internal storage file, I have few text views here. If you all see here in my main.xml, I have also placed two text view at the bottom, which is not holding any text at present, because that I'll be reading back from the internal storage and then showing out on with the help of these text views, right? I create two text views, text view name and number. So these are the ones that will be used to see back information, whatever has been read back from the file system. Create the necessary button references, create a text view name, text view number. Here I have created a method which is going to read the file for me. Alright, so I'll just comment this method, because first of all we have to write something onto the file, then only we'll be reading that from it. So I have the button save click listener. Inside the button save click listener, what am I doing is I'm just checking whether the phone number that has been encoded is greater than 10 digits or not. If it is greater than 10 digits, only then I'll be moving inside. Otherwise, I'll just raise a toast notification and I'll return from here. I say name, number being picked up from the edit boxes, right? Then I create a buffered writer object. All you can see is a buffered writer object here. So I have a buffered writer object. Inside the buffered writer object, I give it a new buffered writer, which is going to take as an input the open file stream writer, open output stream writer, right? So this new open output stream writer, if you see here, returns me an open output stream writer, right? Inside this, I'll be opening a file for output mode, all right? So here I say I open a file which is user info, all right? I open a file to write something onto the file, so I have given it a name which says user info. Here I'm using a mode. The mode that I'm using here is the world mode writable, so that everybody can write onto this file system. All right. Let me know if there is any query here in these two lines. All right. Rachit says, please explain the buffered writer. So whenever we write something onto a file system, Rachit, we actually write it byte by byte. So the object that we make use of in order to write any information onto the file is the buffered writer, so that I just write it buffer byte by byte, so that I have some buffer, I write that buffer, I have some buffer, I write that buffer. So it's like whenever a flight file is being written, it is always done with the help of a byte array. I hope this is clear to you now, Rachit. So here I say a buffered writer object, do a write on the buffered writer object. Write what? Write the name that is being picked up, and then I'm adding an end of line separator. So the end of line separator is the new line separator, or say the /n. All right. Similarly, I do a writer.write number plus the end of line separator. Again, a /n after the number. Once I'm done with the writing, I'll say just close the writer for me. All right. So that is what I'm doing here. I hope this is clear to everyone. Any person having any doubts here? Any person having any queries, any questions here? Let's go here then and let's run this up. So now I think I can close this second emulator, because it was actually opened up only to show Prabha's example here. Here I have the internal storage, right? So let's give it a name. So example, I give Samir's name here. I can give any contact number. If I try to save information, it will raise a toast notification because my number count is less than 10, right? So here I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 0. If I click on save information, it will save the information for me. Alright. Once I have the saved information, where I have to find it up? Alright, where can I use phone in text fields in UI? In that case, I think there is an option. Let me just go here. If you see here, there are various input types, alright, so I can just choose the one. Phone here. If you see here, Prabha, I can choose the one for phone here. Alright, what is the problem here? Alright. Alright, so in this case, it will take only inputs for the phone number. Let me show you that. Can we also write directly using the file output stream? Samir, alright, Samir is asking me here, can we use it directly using the file output stream? I have to check that, Samir, because never done that. Alright, I have to check that because I always use it up with a buffered writer. So here I say, and now if you see here, alright, I'll just, since this does not support the virtual keyboard, in this case, Prabha, it will open up only the input mode wherein you can just key in the numerical or say the numbers. Alright. In this case, whenever the virtual keyboard will be getting open up, it will show you only numbers because the input name is for all the inputs, right? I click on save information. What is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. Alright, I've missed one number here. Alright, as I click on save information, now it will save information for me. Now let's go on to the GDMS perspective here. Alright, go on to File Explorer here. Go on to Data. And under the data, we'll find another folder which says Data. Then we have to find out the package, alright. The package that we are working on is com.ds.samples. Here we go. We have the files information. So this is the file that I had written, user info. Let's pull this out. Let's pull this file out, go on to my desktop here. Let's open this file up with a WordPad here. And you can see that the information that is getting saved onto the file is the name and the number. Alright. So we have written back information onto the file, but we haven't read back from it. So let's see the reading back information from the file system. Alright, so in order to read back, I have to uncomment this read the file method here, which I'll just uncomment. I'll just show you what am I doing here. Whatever I'm doing for writing something onto the file system, I'll be doing just the opposite of it in order to read back from it. I'm saying instead of the buffered writer, which object am I using is buffered reader, right? Instead of the output stream reader, I'll be using a object which is input stream reader, right? Open file input, just the name of the file, because now I do not want it to have anything from the writable mode. I just want to read the file information. Create a string parameter line here. Create a counter object, alright? So the counter will be the one that will be holding the number of lines that I'm reading back from the file system. I say while line equal to reader dot read line, that is I'm having something on the file, I'm reading till the time I get a null file, that is file is emptied up. Alright, so I place it up in the line variable, so it is a single line being picked up every single time. I check whether my counter is equal to 0. If my counter is equal to 0, that means I'm reading the first line, right? So I say the first line that I'm holding up is the text view name. So I'm reading back the name from the first line. I'm doing an increment to the counter. So next time the counter becomes 1. So when it becomes 1, what am I doing is I'm setting up the value to the text view number, because now my name 1 is already being picked up. Alright, so the second value that will be picked up is going to be of the number. Alright, because I know that it only contains 2 lines, so that is what my counter runs. Let me show you that. And you can see that whatever information was stored in the file system has been picked up from the file system. Alright, so I'll let you all take a look at this read the line method. If you have any queries here, you can ask me on the chat window. Here you go. Alright, Samir, I guess you were logged off some time back. So if anything that you are not able to understand, you can respond back onto the chat window. You want me to go through the writer again? The way of process of writing information onto the file, Rachit? As I said, Samir, I'll just see to it, because I have majorly worked on the buffered reader and buffered writer while writing something onto the file system. But I'll just check if I can use the parameters that you're talking about. All right, and I'll get back to you on this. Do not want, so we can talk about it. All right, so Rachit, you were talking about this particular one, the buffered writer. All right, Rachit, as I said, whenever you have to write some information onto the file system, or say onto a flat file, right? So the way it is done is that you have to write information onto the file system byte by byte. So that is why we make use of objects which actually allow us to do this kind of a phenomena, right? So a buffered writer object, what it does is it buffers up the complete text for me, right? And it provides me an output stream, all right? If you see here, I'll just open it up for you here. Can you see this up? It provides you with an out buffer of 8192 bytes. All right, so it is writing it byte by byte onto the file whenever I call the write method onto the buffered writer. So that is what the buffered writer does here, Rachit. All right, any questions still you have, you can still respond back onto the chat window. Prabha, Riddhiman, if you have any questions, you can also respond back onto the chat window. All right, so let's move ahead then. So we have talked about the internal storage. All right, Rachit, all right, I'll wait for you. Samir has again gone offline. I just do not know if there is any connectivity issues at his end. Please explain the stream and the write method. If you see here, Rachit, what is being done here is in the output stream writer. If you see here, all right, I'll just explain it to you in a more better detailed. If you see here, it actually creates a new output stream writer, right, as the target stream to write the converted characters. Are you getting my point? Whatever has to be written onto the file has to be written with the help of these output stream writer, because it converts the character onto a byte array or say a byte stream, Rachit. Alright, so that is what is being done with the help of the output stream writer. And if I have got the byte stream, then I just call the writer dot write and whatever value I have to write up onto the file system. If you see here, file output parameters, one is mode writable, and there are many more. I'll just show you that. So as you all know, every Android compatible device supports a shared external storage. Why I call it shared is because other applications can also make use of this particular space, right? That you can use to save the files. So you can use this area in order to save the files onto your devices. The files that are saved to the external storage are the ones that are world readable because it can be read by the user and also modified by the user. So whenever you are storing some critical information, just make sure that you store that critical information into the internal storage. If you are not using and making use of any critical information, then you have to make sure that whichever information you are writing has to be written onto the SD card, right? So let's cover up a sample for it. First of all, in order to see or say work with the SD card, firstly you have to check whether the SD card is present onto the device or not. There is no point using SD card when you do not have any SD card installed on the device. So there are various ways of doing it up. If you're using API level 8 or greater, so you'll be using a get external cache directory method in order to open a file. However, if you're using API level 7 or lower, the method name will change. Instead, you'll be using a get external storage directory to open a file from it. Alright, so these are the various API level differences that we have up. Let's take a look here. So the layout remains the same. The one that we used for internal storage will be using the same layout for external storage as well. So I have a text view here, I have an edit box, I have a phone number, I have an edit box, then I have a button at the bottom which says save information. Very much the same. I go here, take all the object references here, set the content view, take up the edit text name, edit text number. Here you see I have set up this input type from programmatic mode. Prabha, this is for you. If you want to do it from the program itself, you can do it like this, right? Button save, I have a button save. Then I have a read the file method. I'll just comment this up for some time, right? I say button save on click listener. Read the value from the file or say from the input boxes. Create an end of line separator, get the file information. It is just that I'm getting the input stream or say the SD card content. I get the SD card from this particular method which says environment.get external storage directory. I check whether I can write something onto the file system or not. So if I say I can write something onto the SD card, what am I doing? I'm creating a user info file, right? Giving it as a first argument, I give it the directory. So the directory that I'm making use of is SD card now. I'm creating a file inside the SD card. I hope this is understood to everyone. What exactly a file path information is containing. Alright, so I get this information file path. I check or say create a user info file, append user info.txt file to the SD, I would say the SD cards path. I'll just show it to you by debugging up. Can we also name the folder? That's correct. We can also name the folder Rachit. In this case, if you want to create another folder, you can say create folder and then a / so it will append this up onto a folder, right? So that is how you can create another folder inside it. I create a file writer object. So similar to the one that we did for the input stream or say internal storage, I'm creating a file writer object here. My file writer object is taking as an input argument the user info file, the one that I have created above, right? I create again a buffer writer object which is going to write something onto the file system for me. I do an output object.write name plus the end of line separator. Similarly, another number plus the end of line separator, right? So this is all that I'm doing here, but I'll be asking you a few questions after this complete example gets done. So here I have the example. Can we write other types of files? What all types of files? Excel, etc. are the ones that are not supported here. Rachit. That's correct. We can always write the media files. We can always write the media files onto the external storage, Rachit. But in that case, we'll be picking up the bitmap and then storing it up as a bitmap onto the SD card, Rachit. Right? So that is how we'll be doing it up. I click on save information. Whenever I click on save information, I'll be getting the file saved up. Now see the change in the path, where I'll be looking up for it. I'll go on to the SD card, mount, SD card. I have a file userinfo.txt. Let's pull this out onto the desktop. Let's go to the desktop now. Let's open it up with a WordPad. Can everybody find the contents in the file which I had stored onto the file? My name and the contact number, right? So this is holding both the information. Now let's close this up. Go here. And let's read back information from the file system, right? So let's uncomment the read the file method. Similar to the one that I did for internal storage, I'll be doing exactly the opposite, right? Exactly the opposite in terms of object usage that I did, right? I created a directory, created a file. Instead of the buffered reader, I'll be using a buffered writer. I'll be using a buffered reader object. Give it the file. Again, the same mechanism, the counter, while I can read the lines from the file. If counter equal to 0, that means I'm reading the first line. If counter equal to 1, that means I'm reading the second line. Let me just show you by running this up. Alright, it gives me an exception here. Let me check here what exactly could be the problem here. Find out userinfo.txt is the file. Which file am I using to store here? I think that is all fine here. Let's run this up again and see if there is any problem. We'll see what exactly is the problem. Alright, it gives me a crash again. Let's go on to the logcat and find the problem here. It gives me a null pointer exception here. Where is it giving it to me? It says create external storage activity.java 43. Let's find this up. Alright, it is giving me a null pointer at read the file. What is that? Is it not able to find up the file here? Let's find out. It is present here. Alright, let's go here. Create external 43. Alright, it gives me a file. Readers 93. Let's find out this line here. Alright. I assume that I haven't used the text view name here. Alright, that's the reason here. Alright, I have commented a few lines of code here which was initializing the text view name and text view number. Right, which were initializing the text view name and text view number of the edit text views. So that's what was causing a null pointer here. Now you can see the information being picked up from the file.